Hello everyone. This is Dr. RB. Thank you for joining me. It's actually it's past midnight here, so it's Monday, November the 11th, and there's just a couple of things that I want to share with you. This video actually it is not pre-planned. Usually I do some research and I write up a script and before I give a video. So this is going to be completely unplanned, but I felt the need to speak with you this early morning or late night, just after midnight here in northern Spain, where I am at the moment. So, one of the things that has helped me and my clients be grounded, especially during times of uncertainty, is to really know what you believe in. Now, I grew up Catholic, and this applies to Anglicans and Lutherans and maybe even Methodists. There is something called the Credo or the Creed. Sometimes they call it the Nicene Creed or the Apostles' Creed. And basically, it's something that you memorize since childhood. It becomes ingrained in your mind because you are repeating it over and over, especially if you go to mass, weekly or more than that. So I don't know exactly how long it has been, and this is something that I could probably look up, but a few years back, I decided to write my creed or my credo, as it's known in Latin. And I just, I did this not in one sitting. I did this over time and I came up with a few things. And I find that this is so important to do because when things feel like you're not grounded or like you're floating, maybe dissociating is a clinical word. Basically, you're detaching from life, from your environment, from reality. When you start to feel that way, there's something grounding to the mind for you to repeat something. And I thought years ago, I don't even remember what prompted me to do that, but I did it. And I've come back to it over and over again. And I was even debating if I should share it, which I might, and I'll pull it up here. And so this is so important because many of us simply accept the teachings from our family or from our heritage. And it's not enough to simply just accept something and run with it, especially live your life by. It's important for you to put thought into it, and not only thought, you're putting your whole being into it. You're putting your heart and your gut. And so, there's different ways of doing this. The way that I did it was I simply just, during my morning meditations, because I do meditate in the morning, it takes me a while to wake up, like a lot of people out there. And so I take that time for myself. I take that time for, prayer and meditation and listening to spiritual music. I do different things and I always change it up depending on my mood that day. However, I wrote this creed over a period of time and I keep going back to it. And every time I go back to it, if I feel I have to tweak it, I will. Sometimes I find some, silly things like grammatical errors, but other times I'm like, I want to clarify that a little more. And so I do it. So it's kind of a living document, if you will, if you want to make it formal that way. But for example, I'll give you examples. I don't know if I'm going to read read it. But in my credo, I have 9 things that I wrote down. And there's no, I don't even think I came up with a number. It's not like I decided I'm going to write 9 things. I think that's just where I'm at. If I feel compelled to write more, I will add to it. Like, for example, the very first one, and this is something that, and it should be that way for all of your credo when you do write it, if you decide to do this exercise, it's something that must resonate from your core. It must resonate from your essence, from who you are. And if it doesn't resonate and it doesn't feel like it's part of you in a very deep way, then you might not really believe it. So anyway, the first one that I came up with was, well, I put at the top, I believe, dot, 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 or whatever, and then I list them. So the very first one is that I believe that there is a God, a personal force that is loving, and that for me, I experience God as a loving Father. And this is something that I have believed all my life. I can remember, even when I was very little, of having this belief. Some of you, the word father might be too triggering. So you want to replace that with something that really speaks to you. It might be a loving spirit, a loving force, a loving mother, a loving whatever you want to put there, I'm just giving you an example. I'm not telling you that this is how it should be by any means. I don't believe that. And I'll share this other one with you. I think this is interesting in light of everything that's going on. I believe, this is my number 2, the mystical is more truthful and more powerful than the rational or the logical. I'll read that again. The mystical is more truthful, in other words, more honest, and more powerful than the rational or logical. This is why I believe that Christianity has come from Judaism. The mystical traditions of Judaism were pointing to Christianity all along. Again, this is my belief. So if this is triggering anybody, let it go. Come up with yours. But this is something that's not based on research or facts or any of that. This is coming just from me and from living my life. So I'll read that part again. The mystical traditions of Judaism were pointing to Christianity all along. Parts of Judaism stayed with the laws, rules, and traditions which made both split from each other. Because of this, I believe in Jesus, the Christ, and the Messiah. Now, I know my Jewish friends, this is the part they don't accept. They believe the Messiah is something else, and that's fine. I don't need anyone to believe what I believe, so let me just state that. And when I say this, I'm really referring to something that's even beyond what is in the forefront. And when I say the forefront, I'm referring to, for example, the wording or what we see and understand. That is the forefront for me. That's like the obvious. I think there's something behind that is more mystical. For example, there's something beyond that we can't really, sometimes we can't even verbalize it. Or it's been verbalized in different traditions, different ways. So let me just say that. Because even if we were to think of this as, even to the Jewish faith, there was an idea of having a Messiah, for example. So that is something that was an undercurrent of the faith. And so that means something. Christianity just used that undercurrent and they concretized it in the person of Jesus, right? That's what they did. And then you have Christianity. I think if this is just a thinking, but it could be, or it could have been, that Christianity was never supposed to be separate from Judaism. I mean, Judaism in and of itself, from my understanding and my study of theology, that's my undergraduate degree before I became a doctor. So from my understanding, Judaism had different parts of it, right? I mean, you had different, not so much branches, but different aspects to it. And you had a spiritual component, just like in Islam, you have a spiritual component or a tradition found in the Sufism. And again, I'm just kind of rambling what I'm believing, right? And my hope is not to convince you of anything. That's not why I'm saying all this. I'm giving you an example of a creed or a credo that I wrote. For example, another one is Christ in us, our hope and glory. This is based on the New Testament verse. But for me, this is already pointing at that it's within us. It's something that's within. We're the temple of the divine, we're the dwelling place of God, the God within. And that's something that I totally believe. In many different cultures and traditions, that's why it's so important to respect each other. We respect each other because in a deeper way, we know that each of us carries the divine. And that's why we don't murder each other left and right. I know that, things are happening and that happens, of course. We know that. But anyway, I'll just leave it there. But usually there's a deep respect for the other because deep down inside we know we each carry the divine. Now, I'll share with you the one that I have been coming back to lately. And this is just because of everything that's happening in this last week with the US elections and everything that's going on. And this is so important for me, and I hope maybe it will be for you. This is one of my credos. I believe that life can change in a second. What we know and accept now could be drastically different in a second from now. I'll repeat it. Life can change in a second. What we know and accept now could be drastically different in a second from now. And I think when I was working in London, I worked in London for a few years, and I remember somebody telling me, if you don't like the weather, give it a second. Or give it a minute or whatever they said, but it's the same idea. If you don't like the weather, just wait, a very short time and it will change. The same thing happens with life. I can say that at my core, I am an optimist. And what I mean by that is that besides allowing the reality based on my five senses of what I can, see, touch, all the different five senses, that I include as well the good. So there's the good and the bad. And I'm going to drink a little bit of tea here. For me, and I do this work with my clients, the definition of a realist, a real realist, is someone that holds both the negative and the positive. Because if you say that you're a realist, that means that you accept reality. If you accept reality, reality contains both good and bad. And, and of course, there's people that will say that it just depends on how you judge something. But regardless of that, if you are accepting your life, your real life and reality, then you must accept the good and the bad. So for me, being an optimist means that I accept that there is good. No matter how dire things look and feel, again, life can change in a second. Now, I am a Lord of the Rings, buff. I love Lord of the Rings. I love, all those types of movies. My partner, not so much. He doesn't like a lot of fantasy. I do. It gives me a chance to imagine. And so I'm reminded in Lord of the Rings where I don't even know which one it was, but in one of the Lord of the Rings, it looks like everything's going to take over. All hell has broken loose and everything is just as bad as it gets. And one can easily lose hope. And I remember, I don't know the names of the characters as I'm so bad with names, but it's the one that was by Kate Blanchett. I mean, I know some actors' names, and she's like, I don't even know what she represents, but she's always in white, almost like a spirit type of figure, character in the movie. And she appears and she says, "There's hope," or "Yet there is hope," or something like that. And I get emotional just thinking about it. But it's so true, and one of the things that I find with Lord of the Rings and different types of movies like that is that the author or authors, I don't even know if it's one or many authors, but there's always these lines that they put in that have such significance. The same with Star Wars. There's many different lines in Star Wars, which they seem to point to something deeper. And so that is something that's so powerful. So life can change in a second. What we know and accept now could be drastically different in a second from now. Something to hold on to when you write up your credo and you feel that things just don't feel real or like you're floating. Go back to your credo and it will ground you again. It really will. It works for me, and I've suggested this to my clients. Anyway, I didn't realize that the video was going to be this long. So if you need to get a hold of me, I'll put my link down below in the description. And I read all the comments that come in. So please feel free to write your comment. And I think that's it. Until then, please ground yourself and take care of yourself. This is Dr. RB. Thank you for being with me.